It's lunch hour. Peak time. The hum of the speakers crackles to life. Orders are being shouted across the counter, voices competing with the sounds of clinking cups and the low chatter of patrons. And at the heart of this frenzied moment, a pregnant woman just trying to get through her day. She's sitting there, her hands resting gently on her belly, a soft sigh escaping her lips. The weight of the day has settled on her shoulders, but at this moment, all she wants is peace. She's tired, so incredibly tired, but she's determined to keep going. She doesn't need anything more than a quick meal, a brief moment of normalcy, the simple joy of food, the comfort of fries and a burger. Her mind isn't on anything else right now. It's on the baby she's carrying, that little life growing inside her. Her thoughts drift to the future, the things she has to do, the days ahead. But for now, she's here, in this car, waiting for her meal. She's not thinking about danger. She's not thinking about chaos. She's just waiting. Calm, serene, like so many of us do every day, thinking nothing could go wrong. But sometimes when you least expect it, life has a way of flipping the script. Then, in the midst of the lunchtime chaos, it happens. Two cops pull up behind her car. At first, it's nothing more than a quick glance. Just another car, another issue, or so it seems. But as they step out of their patrol vehicle, something shifts. The energy changes. It's like a sudden chill that settles over the scene. They approach the car, slow, deliberate steps. There's no sense of urgency, no hint of a friendly interaction. Their faces are hardened, their posture stiff. You can feel the tension thickening in the air like the calm before a storm. The first officer leans in with a tone that's sharp, demanding. "Ma'am, you're blocking the line. Move your car, now." There's no please, no sense of understanding. Just a cold command. Her hand instinctively grips the steering wheel. Her heart starts to race. She's still just waiting for her food. She hasn't done anything wrong, but the tension in the air is unmistakable. The second officer hovers just a few feet away, his arms crossed, his eyes scanning her every move, as if he's already made up his mind about her. The body language is clear. They're not here to help, not here to calmly resolve anything. They've already decided she's in the wrong, and now they're going to make sure she knows it. The more they stand there, the more the weight of the moment presses down. It's a simple issue, something that could have been resolved in a few seconds. But their presence, heavy, intimidating, turns everything upside down. And then it happens. The first officer raises his voice again, more agitated now, and the second officer's stance shifts from passive to threatening. The air grows thick with a sense of injustice. She tries to stay calm, tries to hold on to the little bit of peace she's managed to grab. Her hands are still on the steering wheel, but her heart is racing now. She takes a deep breath, her voice steady as she addresses the officer. "I'm sorry, officer. I'm just waiting for my food. I'm pregnant, and I'm tired. I didn't mean to block the line. I'll move as soon as I can." Her words are measured, polite, even apologetic, as if she's trying to de-escalate the situation before it can spiral out of control. She's not raising her voice, not arguing. She's simply explaining calmly the situation as it is. She's giving them the benefit of the doubt, hoping that reason will prevail. But instead of listening, the officer just stares at her with that cold, dismissive gaze. There's no empathy in his eyes, no recognition of the exhaustion she's carrying. He's not hearing her words. He's hearing only the noise in his own mind. The tension, already high, starts to grow even thicker, and with every passing second, she can feel the grip of frustration tightening around her chest. "I said move your car," he snaps again, his tone even more impatient now. The words hit like a slap in the face. She's still trying to stay composed, still trying to stay reasonable, but his aggression is pushing her to the edge. She's a human being, pregnant, trying to explain, trying to be heard, and yet it feels like her words are bouncing off a wall. The officer's posture stiffens, his eyes narrowing as he steps closer to her car, as if the mere act of her speaking is an affront. But she doesn't back down. She repeats herself, a little firmer this time, standing her ground. I understand, but please, I just need a moment. I'll move as soon as I get my food. And then it happens. The moment when everything shifts from bad to terrifying. The officer's patience has worn thin, and with a swift, aggressive movement, he steps forward, his hand reaching for her door handle. "What are you doing?" she protests, her voice shaking but still strong. Her words are met with a sharp, cold look, nothing more than a dismissal. She tries to pull back, her hand clutching the seat, her body tense, every instinct screaming at her to protect herself, to protect her baby. But it's too late. In an instant, they've made up their minds. With no warning, no further explanation, they grab her arm and begin pulling her out of the car. Her protests grow louder, panicking now. "Please stop. I'm pregnant. I didn't do anything wrong." The desperation in her voice is unmistakable. You can hear the raw fear, the tremble in her words, as she fights to hold on to something, anything to stop what's happening. But they don't stop. They pull harder, their hands gripping her tighter, as if it's not enough to drag her physically, but they need to strip her of her dignity too. Her body jerks as they drag her from the car, her feet scraping against the pavement, her cries getting louder with each step. The officers are relentless. No compassion, no pause to reconsider. The fear in her eyes is now clear, and every bystander watching can feel it too. Some of them are just staring, frozen in place, unsure of what to do. Their mouths hang open, but no words come. They can't believe what they're seeing. The scene unfolding before them is like something out of a nightmare they never thought could be real. But it is, and they're watching it happen. Others fumble for their phones, hoping to capture the moment, as if they need proof that this is actually happening. They know it's wrong, they know it's unthinkable, yet they're powerless, just like her, paralyzed by fear, watching the helplessness unfold before their eyes. And as they drag her further out of her car, she feels like the world around her is crumbling. She wants to scream, "Why don't you see me? Why don't you understand?" But all that comes out is a strangled sob. The sob of a woman who's scared, who's losing control, who's been pushed too far. There, in the distance, out of the chaos of the fast food scene, a man stands there, eerily calm. His posture is deliberate, measured, as though every movement he makes is calculated. This is someone who has seen things that most of us could never imagine. He's a Navy SEAL, decorated, trained, and hardened by years of service. This is a man who has stared death in the face, who's been in situations where panic and chaos were the only constants, and yet here he stands, his gaze fixed on the nightmare unfolding in front of him. His eyes flicker with a mix of disbelief and something far colder. His wife, the woman he loves, the mother of his children, is being dragged across the parking lot by officers who seem to care little for the life inside her. His blood runs cold, but he doesn't move yet. He's not rushing in. He's not blindly charging into the scene. Number. He's watching, observing, every detail, every movement, every subtle shift in the situation. His mind is racing, but his body betrays nothing. It's the kind of calm only a man like him can possess, a man who has been trained to keep his composure when the world around him is chaotic. What is he thinking right now? What runs through the mind of a Navy SEAL when he sees his pregnant wife, his partner in life, in distress? It's not anger yet. No, it's something far deeper. Something primal. He sees it. The disrespect, the injustice, the utter lack of care for a woman who is helpless, who is vulnerable. His jaw tightens, his fists clenched by his sides. But he hasn't acted yet. He watches her. His heart racing, but his face remains a mask of controlled fury. He's been trained to keep his emotions in check, to assess, to strategize, to think ahead. At that moment, he's calculating his every move. The situation is escalating, but he's not charging in head first, not yet. The SEAL in him knows that sometimes the best response is to wait, to let the chaos build, to let it unravel further. He's waiting for the right moment, for the moment when the world will see his resolve, when the power of justice will rise from the depths of his quiet strength. And as the scene continues to unfold, as the sound of his wife's voice grows more desperate, more frantic, he knows one thing for sure. This will not stand. Not while he's watching, not while there's breath in his body. She's his world. His mind is already calculating, already shifting gears, thinking of the next move, the next action. But one thing is certain, he's not a man who will let this slide. Not while he's breathing. He's a SEAL, a protector at his core. And no one is going to make his wife feel this way. Not on his watch. As the Navy SEAL continues to close the distance, the scene inside McDonald's remains chaotic, but the tension outside is palpable. The cops, still struggling to maintain control, exchange looks of confusion and arrogance. They're caught in a power struggle they don't fully understand, their authority unchallenged so far, but they don't know what's about to hit them. They barely notice the man approaching from behind, his steps measured, his presence unassuming, but somehow impossible to ignore. One of the officers looks over his shoulder, catching sight of the Navy SEAL's purposeful stride, but the dismissal is immediate, almost automatic. What's he gonna do, the cop thinks. What's the big deal? He's just another bystander, another angry husband, probably thinking he's tougher than he is. They don't know. They don't understand what they're dealing with. The officer keeps his hand on the woman's arm, pulling her along, not bothering to acknowledge the SEAL. The arrogance is there in their posture, puffed up, self-righteous. We're in control, they think. We've got this handled. No need to make a scene. But what they don't realize is that this man who's now within arm's reach is not your average bystander. He's not the kind of man you dismiss or talk down to without consequence. He's been in worse situations, far worse. His body is still almost unnervingly so, and his mind is calm. It's the eye of the storm, the calm before the explosion. He reaches them, and for the first time his voice cuts through the noise. "I'm her husband," he says, his words slow, controlled, and firm. No one expected that. "Oh, so now we have a husband who thinks he can stop us?" The cop scoffs, thinking to himself that this man is just another person trying to interfere. But the husband doesn't flinch. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. "I said I'm her husband." The words hang in the air, heavy, undeniable, a statement of fact that can't be ignored. And as he stands there, calm, unwavering, the air around them shifts. The officer's bravado falters just for a second, but that second is enough. The SEAL's posture is deliberate, his voice unwavering, and the respect that should have been given from the start is now demanded. The woman's husband is not the kind of man you ignore. The cops might think they're in control, that this is just another run-in, another situation they can handle with a few words and their badges. But they don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know the kind of man who stands in front of them now, the kind of resolve running through his veins. He isn't angry, he isn't shouting, he's simply stating the truth. The officer who had been so sure of his power shifts uncomfortably, the smallest tremor in his hand, as he begins to grasp the reality of what he's dealing with. It's as though the badge, the uniform, the authority they'd been so sure of now seems fragile, almost laughable. A Navy SEAL? The thought creeps into their minds, but they try to shake it off. Maybe this is just some guy pretending to be something he's not. They won't fall for it, but the SEAL isn't done. With deliberate calmness, he steps forward, slowly closing the distance. Every movement is calculated, precise, exuding control. The cops glance nervously at each other, unsure now, their arrogance fading into visible discomfort. Should we back off? One of them wonders, but doesn't dare ask. The thought lingers in the air. His presence alone is enough to make them second-guess everything they've done. And then, as if to seal the deal, the SEAL takes out his credentials, his official identification. It's a small gesture, but it's the final nail in the coffin. The moment the badge and credentials come into view, the cops freeze. There's a moment of stunned silence. No one speaks. The tension that had been thick before now feels suffocating, almost suffocating. The officer's discomfort is undeniable, but it's not just fear. It's the uncomfortable realization that the man they've been treating like an inconvenience is, in fact, the one who's in control. And as the SEAL takes control of the situation, his demeanor unwavering, the cops, for the first time, look like they've been caught in a trap they didn't see coming. The tables have turned. What was once a scene of arrogance and authority now feels like a tense game of cat and mouse. And it's clear, this Navy SEAL is the one calling the shots. The woman's husband, calm as ever, holds the room's power now simply by standing there. Quiet, composed, and unrelenting. The cops, now humbled and visibly uncomfortable, begin to understand that this isn't a situation they can just brush aside. This is real, and they're not the ones in charge anymore. As the air thickens with tension, the bystanders, once silent and unsure, begin to stir. They've watched the entire scene unfold, watched as an innocent woman was dragged from her seat, helpless and confused. Now, as the Navy SEAL steps in, the weight of the moment is not lost on them. Phones begin to surface from pockets and purses, capturing every second. The faint click of cameras and the soft hum of recording phones fill the air, amplifying the moment as it happens. The husband stands there, his gaze unwavering, still between his wife and the officers, his stance unshaken. His voice, when he speaks, cuts through the tension like a blade. "I want an explanation," he demands, his tone steady but with an undeniable force. "Why was my wife treated this way? What right do you have to put your hands on her?" His words are simple, but they carry weight. A weight that forces the officers to take a step back, to reconsider the narrative they've spun in their minds. The officers, once cocky and dismissive, now find themselves on the defensive. Their eyes flicker, nervously avoiding the unyielding stare of the man standing before them. The woman's pleas, her protests, had been ignored. But now, in the presence of someone who knows how to command respect, they cannot be dismissed so easily. The power dynamic has shifted completely. Bystanders shift too. The mood in the air is palpable, a mix of disbelief, shock, and anticipation. People are watching, their phones recording the unfolding drama. Some are shaking their heads in disbelief. Others are murmuring amongst themselves, trying to piece together what has just happened. Everyone is aware that they are witnessing something significant, something that, if not for the presence of this husband, could have been swept under the rug. The officers, who once stood with authority, now look uncertain. Their uniforms seem smaller in the face of the Navy SEAL's presence. The once absolute certainty in their actions begins to crack, and the realization sets in. They've overstepped, and the consequences of their actions are now undeniable. And the bystanders? They're not just witnesses anymore, they're part of the story. They've seen the power of standing up for what's right. They've seen the price of injustice. The camera lenses continue to roll, and though the scene may seem like it's coming to an end, the truth is far from settled. The Navy SEAL's demand for an explanation is more than just a request. It's a message to everyone present. This will not stand. And as the officers begin to stammer out their defenses, the mood in the air shifts once more. The energy, once tense and charged with fear, now pulses with something else, something stronger. It's the beginning of justice, of accountability, and most importantly, of the realization that when the right person steps in, even the most daunting situations can be turned around. But the officers, now visibly flustered, realize they've dug themselves into a deep hole, one they can't climb out of easily. Their arrogance, their misplaced confidence is crumbling before their eyes. And just as the tension seems ready to snap, a new voice cuts through the air, one that shifts the entire dynamic. Sirens in the distance, the sound of authority approaching. Higher-ups, more seasoned officers are on their way. The officers on the scene exchange nervous glances as they prepare for what's coming. They know what's about to happen. The realization hits them like a freight train. They won't be able to cover this up, not this time. The first higher authority car pulls into the lot, screeching to a halt. The doors fly open and more officers step out. These aren't the young officers who were caught in the heat of the moment. These are seasoned veterans, their uniforms crisp, their presence commanding. They're not here to make excuses. They're here to fix the mess that's already been made. As they approach, the original officers shrink back slightly, their posture shifting from arrogance to unease. They're no longer in control of the situation. Their mistakes have been laid bare, and now it's time for someone with real authority to step in. The higher-up officers scan the scene, their eyes quickly taking in the details. The crowd, the cameras, the heated exchange between the Navy SEAL and the original officers. They don't need to hear much to understand what's happened. They can see it in the faces of the bystanders, in the way the crowd has gathered, phones raised in the air, capturing every second of the unfolding drama. "What happened here?" one of the senior officers asks, his voice calm but demanding. The younger officers, still shaking from the gravity of the moment, stutter in response. They try to justify their actions, but the words are weak, and their defense crumbles before the higher-ups even have to say a word. The husband, never losing his composure, turns to the senior officers, his voice steady but filled with authority. "This is about accountability," he says, his words carrying weight. "My wife, pregnant, vulnerable, was dragged out of here without cause. It's unacceptable. And it needs to be addressed." The senior officer nods, understanding the gravity of the situation. There's no denying what happened. The higher-ups aren't here to play defense, they're here to make sure justice is done. "We'll get to the bottom of this," the senior officer assures, turning his attention to the younger officers. The tension in the air is palpable, and the higher authorities know what needs to happen next. They won't let this incident slip by unnoticed. The officers who made the mistake are now visibly uncomfortable. Their previous bravado has melted away under the watchful eyes of the higher authorities. They're no longer the ones in charge. The situation has shifted, and the scales of justice are beginning to tip in the right direction. The bystanders who've been holding their breath through the entire ordeal start to exchange glances. The mood shifts from uncertainty to something else. Hope, maybe. They see that the higher authorities aren't brushing this under the rug. There will be answers. There will be accountability. The husband, still standing strong, watches as the officers, now held accountable, are made to face the consequences of their actions. The wife, still visibly shaken, listens. Her hands clasped together on her growing belly, as if to shield herself from the vulnerability she's just experienced. Her eyes, though filled with relief, still burn with the memory of what she endured. But now the apology, though late, signals a victory. And as the officers offer their apologies, the bystanders, who had watched the entire ordeal unfold, their phones capturing every moment, let out a collective sigh. The tension that had gripped this scene begins to melt away, but there's a new sense of respect in the air. Respect for the husband's strength, for the wife's courage, and for the truth that's finally been acknowledged. The officers are left to ponder the consequences of their actions. As the couple walks away, their heads held high. A lesson has been learned, a message sent. And though the battle was tough, the victory is clear. You see, what they have just done isn't just about them. It's about everyone who has ever felt powerless in the face of authority. It's about those who've been mistreated and overlooked, whose voices were silenced, and whose stories were dismissed. This moment, their moment, has become a rallying cry, a beacon of hope, a reminder that when we stand up, no matter how difficult, no matter how uncomfortable, we can make a difference. The couple didn't just fight for themselves, they fought for everyone who has ever been overlooked or treated unfairly. And now they've sparked something bigger than any single injustice. They've shown us that when we stand firm in our beliefs, when we defend the ones we love, when we refuse to stay silent in the face of wrong, it makes all the difference. We all have that power within us, the power to challenge authority, to speak up, and to hold those in power accountable. It's not always easy. It's not always pretty, but it is necessary. And maybe, just maybe, we all need a little reminder to stand up for what's right. Because when we do, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for a better world, for our families, for our communities, for the future. So the next time you witness injustice, remember this couple. Remember their strength. And remember that standing up for what's right doesn't just change your world. It can change the world for everyone. Their fight didn't just end with an apology. It set the stage for a future where we all know the power of our voice and the strength of our hearts. As we reflect on what happened here today, let's remember that each of us has the ability to stand up for what's right, to push back against injustice, to show resilience in the face of adversity, and to lead with courage, always knowing that when we do, we not only lift ourselves, but everyone around us. Now, let me ask you, what do you think about this story? Could you have stayed calm like the husband, or would you have reacted differently? How far would you go to protect your loved ones when everything seems to be falling apart around you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters, and we want to hear what you think. Was justice served here, or is there still more to be done? Drop your comments and let's talk about it. Share this video. Share it with your friends, your family, your community.